about law, society, scholarship, and fandom. Welcome to Semantic Shenanigans.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 10th episode of Semantic Shenanigans. I am Janet Kirshensiegel, and with me, as always, in an undisclosed location somewhere located deep in the heartland, probably has something to do with a super collider, is my co-host, Shanna Gilkison.
Also a 10.
Also a 10. Hell yeah.
Cue crickets, thank you.
And we're modest too, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, the opportunity was there. I had to walk through the door,
Like the Kool-Aid man and a wall, just straight through.
Godzilla in Tokyo, that kind of thing.
Careful of those little buildings.
Right. So what's up, Janet?
So things have changed in the last few months. Life has gotten kind of interesting and extraordinarily busy. Over the summer, I had been working as a freelance writer. I had actually been doing that for about a year. And suddenly the business just took off. And I started to have people demanding my services, which was kind of neat. And at my most busy, I was juggling 7 separate clients. So I would start off in the morning, writing about the nursing job scene, okay? And then I'd switch over to how to train your gun dog. Then I'd switch over to, dental implants, and then mental health. And somewhere in there, I would move over eventually to, I had law. I had divorce law for a while there. And then eventually I would move over to business credit. And less than a month ago, the business credit people said, hey, we want to hire you. So they hired me part-time. I actually started last week. And I bid a fond farewell to 2 of the other clients, and the ones who remain are well aware that I've been hired part-time. I'm probably going to be pulled on full-time at some point. So my availability is going away. Get your requests in now.
Wow.
So that's all happening. And then on the writing side of things, first off, I'm in sort of, I want to say about 2/3, maybe even 3/4 of the way done with the second book of a trilogy, which I started last year. I have the idea for the November story, which is actually not going to be part of the trilogy. I'm going to take a break from it during November for NaNoWriMo and write something very different with characters who are going to really have potty mouths. I haven't done that in a while. And on September 16th, I am sharing with a friend. We are going to what's called Ladies Con in Somerville, Massachusetts, beautiful Somerville. So I am going to be in my first con to do book signing and selling. And we are going to run a panel. We're actually going to run a panel on the Bechdel test.
That's exciting! Congratulations!
So it should be fun. I'm going to crib heavily from our notes from last year, I gotta say.
I can send you some academic articles on the Bechdel test as well, if you like.
Sure. Authority is always welcome. So how about you? What have you been doing?
So it was a busy summer for me because, I was doing the 2 jobs thing and taking a class and doing an independent study. And so what that means is that now fall semester started last week. I am officially a 3rd-year PhD student, which means my coursework is finished. I never have to sit in a classroom as a student again.
Woohoo!
I take my preliminary exams for my dissertation in November. I picked Thanksgiving week to do it because, half the week school would be closed and nobody would want anything from me. So it's this big, long written exam where, basically I have to do 4 essay questions from hell is what that's going to amount to.
Uh-huh.
So the next couple of months are going to be preparing for that. Over the summer, I was at the Fan Studies Network conference in, this time, it was in Huddersfield in the United Kingdom. And Julia, who you remember, Julia Largent, she was our documentary slayer from a few shows ago.
Yes, lovely lady.
Yeah, so Julia and I go to this conference together. This was our second year in a row. We usually take a few extra days before the conference to do some fun touristy stuff. So we actually started out in Plymouth, which was way far south of where the conference was. We stayed with a friend of mine who I haven't seen in 6 years, and I met her through Star Wars fandom. She used to attend the Media West convention in Lansing, Michigan, which used to be the premier con for fanzines. So we're really kicking it old school there. So her name is Vicky. So this was the first time I'd seen Vicky in 6 years. And while in Plymouth, I met in person for the first time somebody else who I had been friends with online for about 6 years that I met through Star Trek Enterprise fandom. And these two ladies did not know each other. So it was just amazing that one night that Vicky and Kelly and Julia and I were all at the same table. It was kind of surreal, but kind of awesome. And I started talking about all these really amazing places that I would like to have a job once I graduate, because I'm not limiting my search to just the United States. Vicky and Kelly kind of made a compelling case for me to go to Plymouth just because I already have a social network there. But I started to think about, I could go almost anywhere because of fandom, because I know so many people through fandom. It's just so amazing. And it just made me, think about what a wonderful thing that I've chosen to do with my life.
And that is a really, fantastic, because, the thing about fandom, it's sort of, I suppose, similar to sports fandom, is that you see somebody with the apparel or something like that, and immediately you have something in common with them, even if you don't speak the same language.
Yeah, it's really just a beautiful blessing of a thing. And those aren't the kind of words that I use often. People know me to be more of a cynic and a sarcastic kind of person. But, it just really did blow me away, when I sat back and thought about it. Now, I did some kind of other cool fanish things while we were there, because it was the Fan Studies Network. We went to Manchester after that because it was close to where the conference was. So what we know about Manchester, number one, Davy Jones of the Monkees was born and raised there, which was amazing. So we got on a bus tour and we were taken past BBC Manchester, which is where Davy appeared on Coronation Street back in the day, long running British soap opera. So I think the next time that we go, I would like to see if I could get a tour of BBC. And then one of the places that I stopped in Manchester, and again from music fandom, if you've ever seen the movie 24-Hour Party People, it's a story about this guy who used to run this club called the Hacienda, and a couple of really important things in music history happened at the Hacienda. First of all, if you like techno, dance, rave music, acid house, all of that music was basically born at the Hacienda in Manchester.
Huh.
Yeah, we had house music. It was, disco got a harder drive to it, and then you had Chicago house, Detroit house. But Hacienda had its own brand of house music, and that's when it got that really acid techno-y kind of drive to it. The other thing that happened there, pop music kind of got a little bit more psychedelic as a result of that. So bands, really influential bands from the 80s and 90s, like Joy Division, New Order, the Happy Mondays, they were, and I think even 808 State, they played at the Hacienda a lot, and they were under the same man's management for the most part. So, the club isn't there anymore. What happened was in the 90s, it went bankrupt. There was like a lot of drugs, a lot of mismanagement.
Well, yeah.
And so the club got rebranded. It kept the name, and they used it for private parties for a while, but the party goers kind of trashed the place so bad that when it got sold to the next owner, they decided to knock it down and build an apartment building. So I went to where the apartment building now stands, and they kept the Hacienda name and the Hacienda brand. So I have pictures of me standing outside of an apartment building that says the Hacienda Apartments. So it was just kind of cool. The club's gone, but I got to stand where, New Order and Joy Division and all these really cool people stood back in the day.
The Rathskeller around here, which was the place where some of the bigger bands started, the Boston area bands, that got sort of, completely taken over, and now it's an upscale hotel, and it's a little sad.
Oh. Well, the cool thing about the Hacienda is I was reading about this online before we went, just so I would kind of prepare myself for what I was going to see. And I don't know if it looks like this now, but I know that when they first built it, they kept the same yellow and black color scheme that used to be inside the club, because the club had like all of these caution signs and radiation and biohazard emblems everywhere. So, they didn't have the radiation warning signs, but they kept the same yellow and black in the common areas, like downstairs in the lobby. And initially, their first advertising campaign, when they were ready to take tenants, it was now that the party's over, you can come home. So they kept that connection to the club. It was really neat.
Yeah, and it's certainly they knew their audience, which is kind of nifty to do.
Yeah, and did I tell you about the home invasion?
No, what the hell happened?
So after Manchester, we went to the conference, and Julie and I did Airbnb for our accommodations for this whole thing, which actually turned out really lovely because it was cheap as hell, and we had some pretty nice places to stay. So I would totally recommend it. We had a good experience. After the conference, we came back to Manchester for one more night because we were going to fly out of Manchester back home, and so we stay, in this lovely house in Manchester. The lady of the house was home. Her husband was out of town working. She's a registered nurse, so she had just worked a midnight shift the night before. So we had this one room, this one small room with bunk beds. It was perfect for Julie and I. Another couple from someplace else was in the room next door, and then the lady of the house was down the hall, and this was on the second floor. Julie and I had to get up at 4:00 in the morning to make our flight out of Manchester. And so, I was already kind of not sleeping just by thinking about all the sleep that I was not going to get.
Sure.
And we get woken up by the house shaking, and we hear boom 3 times in a row. And so at first I thought it was the people next door. I didn't know if they were having a fight. I didn't know what was happening. And the really bad part is that Julia and I both tried to turn over and go back to sleep. All of a sudden there's a knock on our door, and it was the lady from the couple next door. And she says, "Girls, turn your light on. Somebody's trying to break in. We want to let them know that we're awake and that we're aware of them." And we're just oh my God, what? And so...
Well, there's an experience.
We get up and it was just kind of chaotic and crazy. I could hear, somebody on the phone trying to call the police and stuff. And so what happened, the lady of the house thought that Julia and I had left and that we were trying to get back into the house. We forgot something, but then she thought, no, it was too loud. So, she was at the front door. Well, she turns around, the living room's behind her. And that's when she sees all the broken glass all over the floor and everything. She had this triple paned burglar proof glass back door. One of the 3 panes held, and he had the guy had this small concrete slab, and you could just see where he had just been wailing on the door trying to get in. He had broken into the shed, and the lady from the couple next door, she told us, she said that even once he realized that we knew that he was there, he actually stopped and thought about whether or not he was going to keep going, and then just dropped the slab and just very casually loped over the back fence into somebody else's yard. Like, this guy had no craps to give whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well,
So
I'm glad nobody got hurt. I mean, that's holy cow. Wow.
Yeah, it was just insane. But, I mean, and here's the thing, like, a lot of people would be discouraged, like, oh, well, I'm not going to do Airbnb because of this. But you know what? Like, it could happen to anybody. And honestly, I kind of suspect the guy knew she had worked midnights the night before, and that the husband was out of town. I mean, the criminals are smart. Like, they were probably watching the house, did not expect that she was going to have guests for the night.
And more people who could, potentially recognize the guy or anything like that. Wow.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that could happen to anybody, anywhere, right? So, we're not like, oh no, we're never coming back to Manchester, or oh no, we're never doing Airbnb. It worked out completely fine. So, but yeah, so I just wanted to share that story because, it's not too often that you come home from a conference and say, yeah, oh, by the way, I was in a home invasion.
See, we had a very interesting summer, folks.
Yeah. And then, so there's one other thing. I know that we've been on social stuff for a while, but there's just one other thing that I just kind of wanted to stick in really, really quick, if I could. So, like I mentioned, the semester started this week, and so one of my jobs with the university is to advise student radio. We have a student-run radio station at Bowling Green State University. It's WBGU 88.1, and you can actually Google us and stream us online if you want to give a listen. So we were having a tie-dye party. We had radio station shirts, plain white, and we had tie-dye kits, and people were welcome to come and get pop and pizza and grab a shirt and tie-dye it. And we had a live band called Pleased to Meet You. And since last time we were talking about authors building fandoms for themselves and getting started, kind of striking out on their own in a new business, I kind of thought about this with the band today because, they're a new local band. They're local to Bowling Green, called Pleased to Meet You. And the cutest thing happened today, and I just wanted to share this story. Our faculty advisor, so my boss, brought his little girl to the event. She's about 3 years old, and the band played a set, and then we took a break for lunch, and she was talking to the band, and she told them that Taylor Swift was her favorite artist and asked if they knew any of her songs.
Aww.
It was cute, and it's generally not the kind of music that they play, but they got online really quick and they looked up the chords to Shake It Off and one other Taylor Swift song, and with no preparation, no rehearsal, nothing, like they just, in a matter of a couple minutes, practiced a couple of bars, and then they played 2 Taylor Swift songs just to make this little girl happy.
Oh, not only is that adorable, but that's incredibly good marketing. Not only to please her, but to show the entire audience that they are that willing to no pun intended, tailor make their set to please a fan. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I just thought it was great. So I just wanted to mention the band. They do have a Facebook page. I'm not sure if they have a Twitter. They probably do. Or, if you want to find out more about them, you can get on WBGU 88.1 FM's social media, either through Twitter or Facebook and contact them. But, it just really struck me that, not only were they a cool band, but they were very nice guys. And so to me, I feel that if anybody deserved to be checked out and to get fans, it's them. So I'm hoping that somebody here, listening, will check them out. And if you're near Ohio, come to some of their shows because they really deserve the support. They're very nice.
We are in a gig economy these days, and we're also very much in a in a sort of a specific economy, and I'm not really explaining this very well, but where it's tiny niches, where you might not have an enormous number of fans, readers, listeners, etc., but if you can serve them extremely well, then you're succeeding. It may not be this, you may not be becoming a millionaire, and maybe you want to, but these days it's less about that, and it's more about the direct customer experience and giving a much better direct customer experience instead of this sort of one size fits all that we were kind of fed for generations.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that, and I think that's kind of it's born out of that whole entrepreneurship thing that sort of started to boom in the 90s and through the last decade. So I definitely see that trend happening more and more in different kinds of businesses, maybe that we didn't see it in before. We're seeing it in now.
It is the groundswell. If you ever read any social media marketing books, that is one of the classics, is the groundswell.
Oh, cool. Well, one of these days when I'm able to do recreational reading again, I'll check it out.
Awesome. So let's shall we move into the show?
I think so. All right, so some things happened over the summer. As you all are well aware, Janet and I took a break just because it was a busy season for her with her writing business, and I was just insane working like a dog and taking classes and stuff, so we didn't really have time for a show. But given the academic nature of part of this, it almost makes sense that we took a summer off, right?
Exactly. So we graded papers and we sat by the pool.
So some things happened, so we thought we'd probably start talking about that stuff and then kind of move into more recent current events. So a thing happened on Doctor Who.
Oh, yes. Just a small thing.
Just a small thing. Jodie Whittaker was announced as Lucky 13. The 13th Doctor. She has the distinction of being the first woman Doctor in the history of the show. And for those of you who maybe think her name sounds familiar, maybe you've been living under a rock and were unaware of what's been happening on Doctor Who, she co-starred with David Tennant, another former Doctor, 10, in the BBC series Broadchurch, which you can stream on Netflix, and I think within the last month, season 3 got released. So if you haven't seen the show and you like detective stories, that's a good thing to watch. But while a lot of us were celebrating, some people weren't.
Yeah, there was sort of there was a vocal minority that was very upset. Oh my God, you're stealing my childhood. This one I found really interesting, which was, now my son won't have any mentor, anybody to look up to. And I found that really weird because, first off, if that's your son, they should be looking up to you. But beyond that, the fact that a woman has been hired to become the lead on this show doesn't suddenly automatically mean that the last 30 years or whatever, or that's 50 years, I think, of Doctor Who, all of that footage is suddenly somehow been erased. And, so there's older stuff, and God knows it will take you forever to go through all that. And even if that doesn't make you happy, why the heck can't this woman be the role model for your child? Why is that impossible?
Right. Well, and keep in mind too, I know the article that you're referring to, and I find this woman's feminism questionable on so many levels. And here's the thing: there's lots of different kinds of feminism out there, so it's not like there's one answer and you're necessarily doing it wrong. But people like her, and I want to preface this by saying a lot of the pushback came from other women. It wasn't even just your normal, crybaby meninists who were push, or whatever, like whatever they're calling themselves anymore, that were crybabying because now all of a sudden, for them, equality feels like oppression because they're used to the world revolving around them. So it wasn't even just that; it was other women, and so there's this phenomenon that a lot of scholars are looking at now in terms of fandom. In regards to internalized misogyny or internalized sexism, and so what that is. This is sexism and misogyny that isn't your blatant, like, catcalling or, hey, you didn't get the promotion because you're a woman, or okay, well, I love you, but only if you look great in this bikini. It's not like that. It takes on many subtle forms, and it comes as a result of patriarchy, but it's not done on purpose. And it's so much the way we take for granted as normal that we don't even really realize that we're doing it half the time. And so when I was talking to a lot of these women fans about this, it's just like they were like, oh, well, it's not that I'm sexist, I just prefer male characters, or I just prefer the Doctor to be a man. Okay, that sounds reasonable on the surface, but then I would push that and interrogate that a little harder and be like, okay, but why do you prefer the Doctor to be a man? Why do you have that preference? And what it really comes down to is that since Doctor Who was a thing, we've been told that, anybody who could be a credible expert on things like space or time, we've always taken it for granted that that's going to be a man.
And which is interesting unto itself. I mean, I remember we had talked about this a few shows ago, where you're more likely to see a dog, which is Mr. Peabody, as a time expert than you are to see a woman, which is just nuts.
It is nuts. And so the way we do this, like outside of fandom and just as a society, it can take a lot of different forms. It can be women taking more pride in their quote feminine qualities than others, or if you're a man, you're taking more pride in your masculine qualities than others. And it's a fine line between that and toxic masculinity, where guys are calling high school boys are calling each other pussy, and all this kind of stuff for not living up to a given social standard of manhood. It takes the form of looking down on other women. You're not being womanly enough. Slut shaming is a form of internalized misogyny. Oh, well, she sleeps around, it's okay to put her down because we need to make ourselves look better than her. The phenomenon of the cool girl, if you know this from, it's kind of a trend lately, and the protagonist in a movie called Gone Girl was kind of the example of this. She never gets mad, she just lets the guy do what he's gonna do, and basically the message is like, yeah, go ahead, be a jerk, I don't mind, I'm cool, I can handle it. So that's internalized misogyny.
Yes.
And just even just guilt. There's women, there's been recent studies within the last few years about how women communicate differently than men, even in a business email. And so there's been a lot of coming down on other women for saying, hey, just wanted to reach out to you and blah, whereas a man would be more direct and to the point. It's like, we kind of approach things almost apologetically sometimes because we've been socialized to, and we don't realize it, but it's actually born out of patriarchy and misogyny.
It's for anybody who throws out the statement of, well, all girls like jewelry. Every woman wants, every woman wants, what do women want? To be able to eat chocolate and not gain weight or whatever. That there's a gendering to this for no good reason, really.
Really, I mean, okay, like, let's be honest, I do want to be able to eat chocolate and not gain weight, but I defy you to find a man who doesn't likewise want to be able to eat chocolate and not gain weight, because you know what? Past a certain age, it happens to them too.
Hell yeah.
So it's kind of like opened up this internalized misogyny within fandom that a lot of us scholars have kind of turned our attention to. There's been articles out there about Jodie Whittaker having to defend her gender. Basically, she made a very public statement, that basically boils down to, please don't be afraid of me because I'm a woman.
Which is amazing that that statement has to be made in 2017. And the thing that's also that I'm seeing is and not even necessarily with reference to her, but what I'm also seeing is that female characters, to be strong, quote unquote, to be a good female character, very often the push is for them to be fighters, to be physically strong, as opposed to being cerebral or being parental or anything else. You're allowed this panoply of characteristics for male characters, people like Sherlock Holmes, but then when it comes to female characters, in order to be strong, they have to be physically strong. You have this sort of Ripley, Sarah Connor kind of thing. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But so the Doctor is a cerebral character, and I hope that people don't have a problem with Jodie Whittaker, stepping into those shoes and behaving similarly, and that they don't feel that that's either a problem or that that's not a strong character because the character gets out of her predicaments by using her wits as opposed to her fists.
Yeah, and what I find really dismaying too is that some of the arguments against Jodie Whittaker are that they don't want the Doctor to have to rely on sex appeal to get out of those predicaments or whatever, and I'm thinking, okay, so what about the fact that, starting with David Tennant, we've started to think about the Doctor as hot?
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah, and I'll confess, my favorite Doctor is 10. It's the hair. He's handsome, and boy, could he rock those long sideburns. Dude, long sideburns and those nerd glasses that he would wear. Like, my God, my heart goes boom, 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 right? So I'm not going to lie, it is what it is. So I think that to deny her sex appeal because she's a woman is also BS. I see what they're saying, I understand what the fear is, but at the same time, does it serve us to have that double standard?
That's exactly. I mean, we don't want her in a bikini, at least I hope not. But at the same time, to dress her in a sackcloth and bind her and pretend that she's not a female is silly, and it's erasing too.
Too, people will complain if she's not feminine enough. I mean, that's the double bind of being a woman right there. If you're playing a role like the Doctor, or even let's go back to Sarah Connor or Ripley, it's like there's that fine line that you have to ride, because it's like, if you're too pretty, if you're too soft, they're not going to believe you, unless you're Buffy. At the same time, though, you're going to get in trouble if you're too masculine.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is, you and I both have experienced this. It's kind of the nature of how women are treated in our society, just in general. If you're too thin, they think you're anorexic. If you're too heavy, they think that you're a glutton. If you're too socially loose, let's say, then they call you a slut. If you're not, they call you a prude. It's your skirt can never be high enough or low enough. Your blouse can never be cut high enough or low enough. Your hair can never be long enough or short enough. You can never wear enough makeup, not enough makeup, no makeup, only some makeup, or anything like that. And it just, you can't make too much money. You can't make more than your husband or or any other male in your life, even if you're a lesbian, and you can't make less, because then you're a freeloader, and and we don't and we discount what you do.
Yeah.
People are weird.
Yeah, and so a lot of these, we see this in every fandom. There's a pocket of vocal fans who think that they are the fandom police. They get to dictate the boundaries of good taste and what's right, both in terms of the show and in terms of what other fans do. And so, of course, the usual complaints got lobbed at the BBC over the choice of Jodie Whittaker. And I love the BBC so hard, because they basically came out on record as saying, get over it or die mad.
And that's and I see this in Star Trek Discovery also. It's just deal. We're not going to change for you. It ain't happening.
Yeah, and we've said this a lot, I think, in terms of Star Trek fandom, but the same thing goes for any long-running fandom. If the fandom is to continue, if the show is to continue, it has to target newer, younger fans. If they do the same old thing to only appeal to older fans, reality check, we're going to die in a few years. We're not going to be here to spend money on official Doctor Who toilet paper or whatever it is that they want to sell us. Okay, so they have to. They have to court the demographic that's gonna be able to sustain the show. At the end of the day, this is a business, and I cannot stress that enough. And we feel connections, we feel an ownership over the show, because we feel like it speaks to us. It's one of those things that helps us to come to know ourselves. So we feel like it's ours, it belongs to us. But at the end of the day, folks, it's just really good marketing and lots of really good luck, more alchemy than chemistry, really, that you have that feeling. And the sooner we realize that we don't own these things, the better off we're all going to be.
It's times like this that I draw upon the wise words of the opening song for Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is, you're wondering how he eats and breathes and other science facts. Well, repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax.
Yes. It's just a show. Just relax.
Everything's okay. The world's not ending. Trust me on this one, folks.
So, and we are going to go into more depth than Doctor Who on a future show, correct?
Yes, we are, and we're going to engage in a little bit of nepotism, too, because we're going to be talking to another podcast, and the reason I know about this other podcast is because my cousin fronts it.
That's awesome, though. I like it. Nepotism for the win.
But, neither of us have any idea really how we're related, because we're at least third, maybe even fourth cousins. We're way, way far away, from being super duper related to each other. Who the hell knows how we're related? It's going to be very complicated, and the family tree is going to have several footnotes and probably an extra, several pages going off onto, into outer space, to try to show how exactly I, a nice girl from Long Island, am related to a guy from Stockholm.
Your story reminds me. I love old TV shows, and everybody knows I'm a huge fan of the Monkees, and so it reminds me of this episode of Laugh-In that Davy Jones was on, and they did this sketch where he's on a train, and he's looking at the person across from him, and hey, you're my long lost mother, and then hey, that's my long lost brother, and hey, my long lost father-in-law, and just like everybody on the train was like finding that they were related to each other, and then the longer they talked, they realized nobody was related to each other at all.
There's a metaphor in there somewhere.
Totally random, and I'm sorry, but it just came to mind. I had to do it.
Right. Random's good. So, what's our next our next topic?
And now for something completely different. So another thing happened over the summer, and this one is a sad event. In July, Linkin Park frontman Chester Bennington passed away from an apparent suicide, and this was just terrible on so many levels because he was only 41 years old. The guy was younger than me, and it's just tragic all over. They had just played a show actually, and then he was just gone. I understand. I'm not a huge Linkin Park fan. I mean, I rock out to In the End. Like every time it comes on the radio, I turn it up. But that's really the only thing that I know by them. But I wanted to mention this too because there was a fandom angle not too long after news of his death was announced. This thought piece was released, written by Brian Storm, called "Let's Be Honest About Chester Bennington," and apparently the band had just dropped some new music not too long before Bennington passed away, and the fandom did not react very well at all because Linkin Park had changed its sound. We had just talked about Doctor Who and Star Trek and other long-running shows having to evolve and adapt and to appeal to a new audience in order to survive. And so Linkin Park was also doing kind of a natural evolution process and changing their sound in order to appeal to, or maybe it wasn't intentionally to appeal to new fans, but, if you do the same old thing all the time, all your songs start to sound the same, and then nobody wants to listen to you anymore, except for maybe the same 6 people. So the fandom backlash was particularly ugly, and this thought piece was just basically about how, hey, we don't know that there's a direct correlation between, being told by fans that you suck all the time, but, maybe we didn't help the situation. And so I kind of just wanted to talk about this because, a lot of fans kind of take it upon themselves to say some things, over social media or email or anything like that they would never say to another human being's face. And so I just wanted to remind fans that, hey, there's another person on the other end of whatever you're saying. And, just because you have free speech, in the way that you understand it, choosing kindness doesn't make you a snowflake.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of Bob Dylan going electric, and how upset people were, and how they booed him, and how critics, kind of excoriated him for that. But clearly he survived it, and went along, and that didn't permanently affect his career. Of course, this is long before social media, but the feeling that fans have trouble accepting changes, particularly radical ones, is, of course, it's nothing new. And, so that I think is something that fans sort of need to, need to understand, is that this has happened. This has happened before, and so it will happen again. I mean, when Homer was, was talking about the Iliad, and suddenly he was talking about the Odyssey, I'm sure a few people got upset that, why aren't you telling the Iliad story anymore?
Right. And we were talking about this thing with bands earlier today. It's like when you go to a concert, you want to hear the songs that you know. You never care about what's on the new album that just came out. Same thing. It's just really funny how people just kind of want to box artists into just doing the same old thing.
I knew that I was getting older when I stopped paying attention to the new stuff that was coming out on the radio. And that happened, I want to say, in sort of the early to mid 90s. But that was also because sounds were really changing, and the delivery system was changing as well for music. And it's funny because I don't know if you've ever heard of postmodern jukebox, but that kind of pulled me back to some of this, because they would take, and they still do this, where they take current hits, and some of them are really, really cheesy, and they'll give it more of a big band kind of sound. And not that I was ever a fan of big band music, to be honest with you, but that it makes it a bit more approachable. And yes, I know the words to Blurred Lines because of this, and I know the words to Thrift Shop,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I am familiar with what did postmodern jukebox, is that what you called it?
Yep.
Yeah, so I didn't know that it had that name, but I've seen like their videos in social media before, and I just always thought it was brilliant stuff. Personally, like my tastes, I run the gamut from everything. So I kind of have stopped keeping up with modern pop music, which is why I only know the name of the one Taylor Swift song. But at the same time, though, I like a lot of indie. I like a lot of underground stuff. So I still like the genres. I'm just gravitating to basically the same types of underserved artists that our university radio station plays. So, like you can hear country on our station, but you're never going to hear Clint Black because he doesn't need our help to get listeners. You can hear dance music, but you're never going to hear Beyonce on our station because she doesn't need our help to get listeners. So, you can find some really cool stuff that hasn't been played to death. So I do keep up with new things, but, and I never try to get upset if my artist evolves because, they have to. They have to try new things, number one, so they don't suffocate creatively, and number two, that it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business, and they're either doing it for love or they're doing it for money, and hopefully they're that rare artist that gets to find that sweet spot where they get to have both.
And and as artists, I mean, you would hope that they would take risks as artists, because that's kind of what makes you an artist. I mean, otherwise you're a cover band, or you're an oldies act. I mean, God love him, but oh God, I'm totally blanking on his name. Rick Rolling. That guy.
Oh, Rick Astley. Yeah.
Thank you. Never Gonna Give You Up. He has been singing that song for, what is it, the better part of 30 years, and he can milk that probably for another 30 if he lives long enough, and his voice holds out. God love him, but that's all he's known for. And if he ever tries to go past that, people will get too upset. He's sort of imprisoned by it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I kind of keep hoping that the Rick Rolling thing will get him enough, like, attention or whatever. Like, he'll just hit on something else new, and then, like, somebody, I kind of really want the guy to make, like, a comeback, even if he's, like, a two-hit wonder again, because he also had that, along with Never Gonna Give You Up, he also had She Wants to Dance With Me. That was another big club hit at the time. So maybe he'll be a two-hit wonder again with two other hits. Like that's my hope for him.
And by the way, Rick Astley, if you want to be on the show, give us a call.
Yeah, but should we Rick roll him?
Of course. But that would be really meta.
Because I don't know if it still works, but I know that there was a phone number where if you called it, you would hear that song on the other end. So like when guys would ask girls for their number and they didn't feel confident, that they could tell the guy no and he'd go away. Again, internalized misogyny. they would just give him this phone number, and then he'd call it and then get rickrolled. This is how the whole thing started. So yeah, I don't know. I think I would feel bad rickrolling Rick Astley, but at the same time, it would be funny as hell.
So, to move along from internalized misogyny, if I might, here's a segue for you. So, mansplaining got back in the news.
Yeah, so some guy who directed some movies.
I don't know, some guy. I never heard of him. Who the hell is he? Linda Hamilton? Did she know him?
Maybe, I don't know. James Cameron went and made a statement about Wonder Woman, and I don't know, it kind of made me wonder if he actually saw the same movie I did. He said some pretty derogatory things, and should I just go ahead and read his statement? It's really short. It's only a short paragraph. So the part that hit online that everybody's really been upset about, he says, all of the self-congratulatory patting Hollywood's been doing over Wonder Woman has been so misguided. She's an objectified icon, and it's just male Hollywood doing the same old thing. I'm not saying I didn't like the movie, but to me, it's a step backwards. Sarah Connor was not a beauty icon. She was strong. She was troubled. She was a terrible mother, and she earned the respect of the audience through pure grit. And to me, the benefit of characters like Sarah is so obvious. I mean, half the audience is female. So thank you, James Cameron, for mansplaining to me what feminism in film is supposed to be. Because as a woman, I have absolutely no idea.
Clearly, and I like how he also got an ad in for his own art. That's interesting.
So this is so problematic, and James Cameron is so problematic on so many levels. I mean, first of all, if he's comparing Wonder Woman to Sarah Connor, okay, you're trying to tell me that she wasn't objectified when she's all sweaty in a little white tank top?
Yeah. There's yeah, exactly. There was more going on there than he even wants to admit.
Right, and it goes back to what you were saying before about, like, for a woman to be strong, she has to be physically strong. So, okay, hooray for Sarah Connor and for Ripley that they can totally kick ass, because we need those women. But Wonder Woman showed us that we could kick ass and still do it from a place of compassion and love. Does that make sense?
It's also the the old chestnut of you can be pretty or smart, pick one.
Right, and I don't know. This whole thing is so problematic. And then, like, my initial thought on reading this is this from the guy who gave us Avatar.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I haven't seen the film, but I am aware of what's in the film. And I had an extensive discussion with one of my colleagues, also a former guest of the show, Gabriel Cruz, who specializes in representation in comics. And, we were talking about, how everybody kind of knows that Avatar is Dances with Wolves in space. So it's kind of this white savior movie, just like Dances with Wolves was.
It absolutely is, yeah.
And basically, and this was something that I was not aware of until I had this discussion with Gabe the other night. But basically, they get around on these animals that fly that they basically have to mind rape. What?
Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness that goes on in there. I mean, I clearly, if you're trying to portray an alien society, you're going to want to make it alien, and that means that there are going to be some things that human beings sort of can't relate to, or at least it should be, because if you really want to be honest about aliens, they're probably not going to be a lot like us. But yeah, at the same time, it's a male character who goes into it's a somewhat matriarchal society, actually, and he's the one who saves the day because, of course, he's a guy.
Because he's a guy. Yeah, so I don't know. After all of this, I just kind of want to say, okay, James Cameron, take a seat. You're done.
Yeah, doesn't he want to make 6 Avatar sequels or some craziness like that?
I don't know, but he needs to be stopped because the first one was problematic enough, and
and he made $1 billion from it. So, how many more yachts do you need? You want to buy a continent at this point, man?
No, I don't know. Is he going to use the next one to say, see what I mean about what feminism is? This is the female hero that you want. Yeah, okay, James Cameron, sit down.
Well, and he also, he was also kind of roundly criticized for creating an alien race that was not mammalian, but the women had breasts anyway because, how else are you going to tell the difference, right?
Because boobs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I just, I didn't want to give a lot of time to this Joker, but it's a thing, it happened, and it just kind of relates to so many other things that we're talking about today, and I don't know, I think, we almost have to do, another feminism episode.
Oh God, we could probably do several, because Joss Whedon got into the act as well, because why not? What the hell?
Because why the hell not? Yeah, so recently it came out, his ex-wife wrote an essay basically exposing Joss Whedon as a hypocrite for preaching feminist ideals while having many, many affairs behind her back and, just all kinds of screwed upness that you wouldn't expect a real feminist to do. So if we've ever watched Buffy, we know that it's girl power, but at the same time, a lot of the feminism in that show is problematic. Not the least of which it comes, it's basically the brand of feminism that people call white feminism these days, which kind of excludes women. Well, not kind of excludes, it does exclude women of color and just kind of appeals to issues of white middle class women. So that's the number one problematic thing with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm sure his other projects have issues as well. I have to say I'm more of a Buffy fan than a Whedon fan, so I just have not kept up with the superhero movies. I didn't watch Dollhouse because I didn't have time. I was one of those people who tried to watch the first episode of Firefly, didn't get it, and so I just didn't watch it. So I'm like one of the few mutants that is not a Firefly fan. So all of this said, a lot of things have happened with this essay coming out. First of all, a fan site devoted to Whedon called Whedonesque has shut down after 15 years. They just called it quits. They have not made a statement saying that it was a direct result to the ex-wife's allegations. But the timing, what it kind of sounds like is that it was something that they were thinking about winding down anyway because they'd just been doing it for so long. They were getting tired. They were getting other interests. And it was just after this, how do you recover from it? So I think they just kind of decided now was the time to quit the site. The good news is that fandom is kind of interrogating its creators. And, here's the thing. The stuff about Whedon is nothing new to Star Trek fans, right, Janet? Because, we as Star Trek fans, we've also have had to navigate between Gene Roddenberry's wonderful vision for the screen versus his problematic behind-the-scenes persona. Am I right?
Definitely. That's the thing too. We have to remember that the people in front of the camera, or who do the writing or whatnot, they go home, and they have lives, and their lives aren't necessarily, these wonderful paragons of virtue.
Exactly. And so, it's one of those things, and so some of the articles that I've been reading have come out and said this as well. But one thing that I want to remind people of is that film and television are collaborative endeavors. So even though the Whedons of the world and the Roddenberrys of the world have created something wonderful, other writers, other producers, the actors themselves have all left their indelible marks on the thing that you love. So, some of the I haven't seen this a lot, but this kind of also came out with the Doctor Who thing, and people just get really reactionary. And it's just a sign of just how deeply invested they are in the thing they love, and where they're like, well, I can't watch Buffy anymore. This has ruined Buffy for me. And you really shouldn't let these things ruin the show for you, because at the end of the day, it's what you did with it that matters. The thing that you love about the show is still in there for you to watch anytime that you want. There comes a point where the work has to stand apart from the creator and stand on its own. So, the things that you loved about it are still there. The fanfic you were moved to create about it is still, a wonderful part of your experience being a fan. And the things that you loved about it might have even been written by another writer. I mean, Whedon had to give his final approval, but he didn't create everything about that show. He didn't write every line of dialogue. He didn't write every scene. So, I guess I'm saying don't throw the baby out with the bathwater over this.
Right. And, and particularly television these days is a way more of a collaborative effort than I think it ever has been. So, with writers' rooms and whatnot. So you might have one person pitching an idea and another one saying, okay, well, here's how it's going to work in the continuity, and another one saying, okay, well, here's how it's going to work in the timeline, and then yet another person saying, okay, well, we need to, advance this particular story arc, and then, okay, we're going to take this other story arc that's been the big one, and we're going to move it to the side for a while, or maybe we're going to give it a little bit of love, but we're not going to give it a huge amount for this episode, so that sort of keep it in viewers' minds, but don't make it the front and center. Or okay, well, we just heard from the agent from this actor, and they're not getting enough lines, and they're getting upset. Let's give them a larger percentage of the of the lines, and so there's a lot of these balls in the air that are getting juggled at the same time, to keep the to keep egos happy, and to advance certain plots and work around, and look at this, and now one of the actresses is pregnant, so now we got to shoot around her, and all the things that you got to do to handle that, or do you want to create a pregnancy storyline, which some shows will do, and so it's not all one person's vision, because it can't be. It's too complicated. There's too much going on.
Exactly. And, part of the reaction, too, that I'm seeing from Whedon fans, Buffy fans in particular, I kind of feel like that there's sort of like this identity crisis going on now because of this, because it's like, Whedon's brand of feminism has been exposed as not only problematic, which has been, a part of the fandom discourse ever since Buffy was first on the air 20 years ago. But also, I think that they feel like if they continue to identify as Buffy fans, this somehow makes them bad feminists. And so one thing, and I feel like everybody should read this book, not just Buffy fans who may be feeling a little guilty for still loving Buffy, but in one of my women's studies courses last year, I read this wonderful book called Bad Feminist, and the author's name is Roxane, with one N, Roxane Gay, and basically it's about how to navigate all of this stuff and still be a feminist. And this is kind of where I got that concept when way back on the first show when we were talking about toxic fandom, about how it's okay to love something that's problematic as long as you grapple with it and don't ignore it, don't sweep it under the rug. Think about it, discuss it, but it doesn't make you less than if you still love this problematic thing.
Exactly, and so many of our heroes have maybe not feet of clay, but there's something that's or there's some skeleton in their closet. So if we if we toss all that out, then we lose out because they're imperfect. What a wild concept! They're not perfect people.
Yeah, and so we should just be thankful for the great work and enjoy it for what it is.
I want to touch on Star Trek Discovery because we have talked about it a bit. The main thing I want to talk about here is actor Jason Isaacs, because he's going to be playing Captain Lorca, who is actually not the focal point of the series. For the first time ever in a Star Trek series, the main character is not the captain. So it's being filtered through a different crew member, an actress's POV. And what Isaacs has said is he's kind of hoping that the fans will be outraged. He's courting that, it seems. And, because we had talked about fans, not liking changes and getting upset. But Isaacs seems to be embracing it. I got to say, I'm actually kind of happy about this because, to be perfectly honest with you, I hope that as a captain, he's an absolute jerk.
Yes.
Because we've never had that as a main, a somewhat main character, or at least for the hero ship. That has never happened. We've seen, the crazy admirals and folks like that, and we've seen folks who've had other issues, like Decker in TOS, who was probably just barely this side of sane, and and other folks who had other problems, but Garth Izar for one, but. For the hero ship to be run by a guy who you just want to pee in his cornflakes would be just, I think, awesome and a real great departure.
Absolutely, and I kind of want to focus on one part of his quote here from the story, because it actually caused quite a dust up in one of the Star Trek face groups I'm in, and probably every place else too. But where he says, I don't mean to sound irreverent when I say I don't care about the diehard Trek fans. I only don't care about them in the sense that I know they're all going to watch anyway. And so I kind of feel like, he's probably been listening closer to social media than people think, because it's like, there's been all of this... I'm going to go out on a limb here and just call it what it is. All of this crybaby outrage about Discovery out there anyway. And, people are like, oh, I'm not going to, I'm not going to get all access. I'm not going to pay for it. And, I'm not going to watch because it's not real Trek and blah, blah, blah. And we all know that they're going to watch anyway, even if they end up going to a friend's house, or if they end up getting that free 30-day trial to start at first. Even and this is, God, like, I feel like every single story that we've done today is exactly the same story, just about a different show, because this whole thing happened with the Jodie Whittaker thing too. People saying that, that they're not going to watch, but then like, well, I'll watch the first episode just to see. But it's like, why are you bothering? Because everything in there, you're going to take as proof of whatever you're saying. And even if it's great, you're going to pick every little thing and talk about why it's wrong, just so that way you can have some confirmation bias and feel all better about yourself and all superior because the show in your mind is crap. If you go in wanting it to be awful, guess what? It's going to be awful, no matter how great it is.
Exactly. And, and for all the folks who are feeling that way and who want to behave that way, I bet that if they were going into something, if they were trying to present something new, whether it's some report at work or they had written or created something artistic, or they're even introducing the child to somebody, I would hope that they would want for their artwork, their child, their report at work or whatever, to be maybe not accepted, but certainly for the recipients to have open minds about these things. It must be tough to have such a closed down mind. Oh God.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like when this whole thing blew up in that Facebook community, I actually, went in and stuck up for the guy and said, you know what, I think this is amazing because he knows you're going to watch anyway. He's calling you out on your crap. And I, for one, I mean, I love him as an actor already, just for saying that. I find the honesty refreshing. So he absolutely has my support no matter what. Yeah, I love the man.
I now ship him with kind of everybody at this point. So
I ship him with me. I mean, come on.
But hell yeah, absolutely. He needs a redhead on the ship.
Absolutely, and I'm just the redhead to do it. Call me Shanna soon.
Will you be wearing red, or is that a little too much?
Will I be wearing red? Well, I think at this juncture, red shirts still die, right?
Probably. Yeah, but I think actually everything's still blue costumes.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I haven't looked at them. Like I've noticed like the deltas on everything, but I didn't look closely enough to see if they had like different colored borders like they did on Enterprise to kind of denote who's doing what.
I can't tell from the images that I've been looking at, but I will admit that I haven't looked at every single image that's out there.
I haven't either, just for the sheer fact that I don't have time, and these controversial things keep happening in fandoms, different fandoms everywhere, and so many of y'all out there are acting a fool that it's just too hard to keep up with the stuff that I actually want to keep up with, because now I have to go see what this new kerfuffle is so we can talk about it on the show.
Yes, that's what we do here. We report on kerfuffles. It's our niche.
Your fault.
I'm
you know sorry. Who you are.
Go stand in the corner.
Right, but no, I for one will be happily tuning in. Now, I have a question, and maybe this is just me turning into an old person and not understanding how technology works. So CBS All Access, it works kind of like similar to Netflix and Hulu in that everything's streaming, so you can get it on demand in exchange for a monthly fee, correct?
I do believe so. I have not ordered this yet, actually. I'm kind of waiting until the last minute, but we are going to order it.
I am too, but what I was wondering though is so we know the date that the show is going to start, but what time can I start watching it?
I have no idea. 1 minute after midnight? No concept. No clue at all here.
Yeah, see, I don't know, because I think for Hulu, I think for The Handmaid's Tale, the date that the episode came out, at 12:01 a.m., I think you could start watching it. So I didn't know if Star Trek was going to work that way as well. And, my mom and I, since, and I've talked about this before, Star Trek is very much a family experience. It's something that my mom and I have done together since before I was born. So it's kind of really important to me that, she and I watch the premiere of Discovery together. And so, just to for the sake of coordinating our day, if anybody knows the answer to this, please write into the show, leave a comment, Facebook or Twitter, wherever you experience the show at, and just let me know if you know, because I very much would like to plan a day with my mom and watch this show with her.
And let us know what snacks you're going to be having when you first watch the show, please. It's a scientific question here.
I think we're going to cook out if it's nice out, but...
Ooh, that sounds nice.
If you want to come to Cornfield, Ohio, I'll make you some.
How awesome. Actually, this is, we got... I have Ladies Con on the 16th, and then from the 19th to the 22nd, we are going to Cape Cod, me and my husband. So it's going to be a very weird week right before all this stuff starts. So,
jealous.
This is like sort of we do an anniversary trip, and then we do kind of a late summer trip. So this is a late summer trip. So, yay!
Gotcha. So do we have news?
We have news-ish sort of news. It's not exactly, a big scoop here. But over the summer, I had released a few extras, which were kind of where I had stuff that had been accumulating for quite a while. And I wanted to kind of get it out there so that it would be relatively timely and to comment on some of this stuff. So what had happened is the Dr. Seuss case is Dr. Seuss Enterprises et al. Versus... David Gerald and others. And this is a copyright case. Actually, they also had a trademark claim, and so the lawsuit had come out earlier this year, and there was a motion by the defense for summary judgment, and that was granted in part. Now, there were news outlets that said, "Oh wow, this is fantastic! The defense won." No, you don't know how to read a legal document. Because in matters such as this, whatever is not explicitly said that they have a point that they have won on means that they've lost on that point, and they definitely didn't win on every single point. It was not pure summary judgment. It wasn't that the case went away completely. Nothing of this sort. Instead, what happened is the complaint was kicked back to the plaintiffs, and they were told to redraft it. In addition, the court also said, your trademark claim, forget it. That one, they do get real summary judgment on. That one's gone. So we do have blog posts on both of these, and there's actually videos on that as well. So if you want to listen to me talking about these. The amended complaint did come down over the summer, as expected. It was a lot clearer than the old one. A lot more detail. Those who remember the Axnar case will remember that the exact same thing happened there, where there was a relatively vague complaint, and then defense moved for summary judgment, and then it was granted in part, and then defense was allowed a second bite out of the apple to try to get the complaint right, and then they got the complaint right, and then there was another motion for summary judgment, but then the court moved them along and said, no, now we're going to move along. That's exactly what's happening here. You want to know why that's happening? Because that's standard operating procedure. Why is it standard operating procedure? Because the law is a way to wear nice clothes and get a pretty nice salary for being passive aggressive. It's the passive aggressive mentality in the law is it's really common, but there's a strategic reason for this. See, the tactic behind it is you kind of want the other side to spend if you can do that. And how are you going to get them to spend? One of the ways you can do that is by making their lawyers work longer. If their lawyers are billing on an hourly basis, then of course their bills are being jacked up, and if they're billing on a flatter basis, but they're billing possibly on a flat rate for a court appearance or for pleading or a motion or things like that, then that's also racking up the costs. Because even in even in pro bono cases, and the Seuss case is not pro bono, so everybody's paying here, which is unlike an Axanar where the defense had pro bono representation. But even in pro bono cases, you are charged for court appearances. You're charged for their expenses. So every single time you can get your opponent in court means that their bill is getting higher. Of course, yours is as well. But if you've got the money and they do not, it's a great strategy. It's an annoying one. It's a really passive-aggressive one, let's face it. But it is a great strategy to get them to keep spending money. Because at some point, somebody's going to have what they call in the business, the come to Jesus meeting. That moment of, hey, wait a second, this is costing us a lot of money. Or, hey, wait a second, this is costing us a certain amount of money. We can only win this amount. This is not worth it. Or, hey, this is costing us X amount of money. We could win Y amount of money, but our chances of winning Y amount of money aren't very good. So between all of these things, we're going to make a cost-benefit analysis. If you think that's not justice, you'd be right. Of course it's not justice, but that's not the way that the law works. The way that the law works is, and yes, this is very cynical on my part, and yeah, this is one of the reasons why I stopped practicing. But it's not, this is not Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men getting up in the courtroom, in the jury room rather, and saying, okay, well, this is not just, it's not right. Not to say that that doesn't happen. Not to say that there aren't people who are interested in justice and mercy and goodness and human rights and all those wonderful things, because there are. Of course there are. But in many, many cases, a big chunk of what happens in the law is economic.
And it's so true. I mean, I experienced something similar in a landlord-tenant dispute. Over 20 years ago, we had this problem where our apartment complex was purchased by your friendly neighborhood slumlord, and we were having problems with maintenance issues, and they were basically trying to do a constructive eviction by making our lives so miserable that we would just leave. And it was really unjustified. I mean, we were actually very good tenants. We were neighborhood watch block captains. We were the kind of tenants that normally you would think that they would want to hang on to. But I think what it was that they just wanted to remodel the apartments and get everybody out of there so they could start jacking up the rent and all that kind of stuff. Probably. And the breaking point was when they would not fix our air conditioning, and we constantly had our lives disrupted over maintenance issues and all that kind of stuff. So we started putting our rent into escrow. We sent them the letter. We did everything by the book. Well, what they didn't know was that the guy that I was living with was working for a prominent university hospital in the area, and one of his employee benefits was free legal representation. So basically, we put it in a situation where we made them sue us, and then we countersued. And they kept trying to, do all this crazy, stupid stuff. Well, then the attorney let us know that, basically what it was is that they were trying to count on the fact that the landlord had deeper pockets than we did, not knowing that the representation was not costing us a thing because of the university.
And so you can see where the strategy obviously backfired, but you can see why they were doing it. If they think that you're just a bunch of tenants, and maybe you have decent money but you don't have a huge amount, that you're that the representation's not going to go on forever because you just plain can't get it to keep going and going and going.
Yeah, and so it just like any law case, nobody got everything that they wanted, but we got reimbursed the rent from the hot months that we were miserable in our apartment. And we were not let out of our lease the way we wanted to be. But, it was kind of mutually agreed between the landlord and ourselves that, we would not be renewing when the next time around came. So we felt like we got justice, but again, it's that whole economic thing, right? Like if we had to represent ourselves, they might have intimidated us into backing down, or if we had to pay for a lawyer, it might have been a whole different story. And clearly they were trying to make us give up, and we might have.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that when you bring in your high-powered lawyers with their $1,000 suits and their and their $1,000 briefcases, and they all walk in together and everybody's very quiet and very stern looking. I mean, obviously that's very strategic. That's intended, of course, to reimburse people. I mean, when I was practicing, I was like 23 years old and 24, and so I wasn't exactly intimidating. But people thought that they could push me around, which was always interesting too. That would be no.
No, but I would just, and I'm sorry to go off on the tangent there, but, I just kind of wanted to drive home to the listeners that this is like such a common and valid strategy that it's not just limited to cases that you hear in Hollywood. Like this is in almost every single kind of law, except maybe even small claims court. But I don't know, maybe even there's strategies that, plaintiffs and defendants can use there much the same way. I don't even know. But.
Well, usually in small claims and also in traffic court, your two best strategies are wear nice clothes and show up.
Right. Well, yeah, and yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and be polite. The person who comes in cutoff shorts and swears at everybody and walks in late is probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt from the judge. So there were a bunch of other things that have been happening recently. Some are kind of upsetting. Some are kind of inspiring. Where were you for the eclipse?
I was actually in the middle of Cornfield, Ohio, otherwise known as Bowling Green. I did not get the special eclipse glasses because I was trying to be fiscally responsible during the summer. The grocery store that I was working for at the time actually sold them, but we sold out by the time I felt confident enough to buy some. And then I found out that they were giving them away at the planetarium here at the university. But again, by the time, I just got to that point in my day, I thought they were probably going to be gone by the time I got over there. So I actually streamed the whole thing online from NASA, and I just sort of like watched the light change out my window as I did it. And it was actually really cool watching it streaming because you got lots of different information and facts from different NASA scientists. So that was actually pretty neat.
See, here it was maybe 20%, so it really wasn't, anything significant. So you didn't really see it getting darker. There wasn't anything like that, and it was a work day, of course. So so here I'm working away, ticka, and then suddenly it's like 12, it's like 2:57, and I realize, holy cow, I missed the eclipse, and I go outside, And I don't have glasses either, and it's not like I'm looking at the sun because I'm not insane, and I kind of like having my eyesight. But at the same time, I'm walking around expecting mass hysteria, dogs and cats living together and stuff like that, and of course nothing like that's happening.
Yeah, we weren't in the zone of totality here in Bowling Green, so I think according to the news, we were like in the 70 to 80% range. So as I watched outside, it basically got storm dark, not like dark, but it looked like a storm was coming. And, I've been in these types of eclipses before. And so like everything gets this kind of like weird color shift to it. Like the green is still green, but like, I don't know. I describe it as all the colors being like one off.
Interesting.
And yeah, I mean, at least that's how my brain makes sense of it. And then it got really storm dark, and then then it started to get brighter, and probably like within about an hour or so, the color kind of just like returned to normal for me. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's how it looked to me.
I remember seeing a friend on Facebook who also was in the Midwest saying that the color of the sky and everything reminded her of tornado warnings, like a tornado day.
Yeah, and you know what? I kind of feel like I had that one-off color feeling the last couple of times we've had tornado issues. So yeah, it's probably, you know, very, very, very similar.
Also in the news, you know, as part of the apocalypse, Nazis and white supremacists marching in Charlottesville, and of course, unfortunately, a fatality there. And then they came to Boston, and there were less than 20 of them, and over 40,000 of us. So that was a little different here. They came to other large cities, and it was kind of upsetting seeing all this happening. I mean, you know, even if you know you're on the right side, it's still pretty upsetting to see it going on.
It really is. And, you know, to try to explain this to people who, you know, don't understand why, even given the First Amendment, I feel so strongly about how wrong this is. Like, think about going to Germany. Think about being in downtown Berlin, and how people would feel if, you know, a white supremacist were waving swastika flags. Like, it doesn't happen. They don't have monuments down there to Hitler and other people who led them in the atrocities the government was committing against other human beings. And the reason for that is because culturally they are ashamed of that dark period of their history. And so, you know, the reason why this is so dismaying for so many of us to see here in the United States is that it's awful that people here have not learned to be ashamed of similar actions in our country.
You know, what is really interesting is that there's a Nazi party here in the United States, and there isn't one in Germany because it's illegal there.
Right.
So we get to be lucky. We're elected, but and for anybody who's, you know, yelling about free speech, you know, talking about free speech, First Amendment, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. You know, free speech. And when this happened, I you know, dug back and I looked at the Skokie case. In the 1970s, the Nazis wanted to march in Skokie, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, which has a heavy Jewish population. And at the time, it was a lot of Holocaust survivors, obviously. That's shifted a bit, and that's not because people are moving out. It's more because of people passing away. And that case went to the Supreme Court. And what they tried to hang their hat on was the idea that the swastika itself was considered what's called, quote unquote, fighting words. Terminology or speech, which by its very nature would cause a disruption, a disturbance of the peace and violence. And the Supreme Court said, no, it's not. It's just a symbol. It's a hateful symbol, certainly, and it's got a lot of hate behind it. But the symbol itself isn't, quote unquote, fighting words. Recognize that this is still a time period when calling a man gay was considered fighting words. So this is it was kind of an interesting ruling in Skokie. But you know, coming back to 2017, I've got no problem with free speech, obviously. I certainly support free speech, freedom of assembly, and everything that the First Amendment stands for. However, the thing to keep in mind is that the First Amendment very specifically says that Congress shall make no law abridging free speech, you know, freedom of religion, etc. That means the Congress can't do it. It doesn't mean that your employer can't restrict speech, because of course they can. Your landlord can restrict speech. Your school can restrict speech. Your house of worship can restrict speech. Your greengrocer, for crying out loud, can restrict speech. The First Amendment only says that your Congress can't. In addition, the other thing I want to leave you with on this topic is that freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences of that speech. So when these folks are getting doxxed, and I don't condone doxing, but when these folks are getting called out, when there's clear images of them, and they're losing their jobs over this, I got no problem with that. Yeah, I'm sorry that you lost your job, but you didn't have to go to a Nazi rally.
So I have a question, because, you just used the word doxed. And does doxing apply here? Because they're publicly assembling. They have no reasonable expectation of privacy. I don't know. I mean, maybe their addresses and phone numbers have been published. I haven't seen anything about that. But then, again, I'm just at a point in my life where I can't keep up with every single detail on things. But, some of these people that I have seen, like, they have a Facebook page or they have a Twitter page, and, they've been known to be active in white supremacist groups. So I'm wondering, is, calling them up publicly, is that really doxing if they've been showing their face and if they have a presence?
I think that's a really interesting point. It's a really interesting question because I would agree with you. It's probably not really doxing. We're sort of using that term for, going on the internet and finding people's names and addresses and whatnot. But if that stuff's already known to the Southern Poverty Law Center, then it's just sort of a redundant thing that people are looking up. I mean, it's the same thing with anything else that you put out online. If you're making a Twitter stream and you're putting stuff out there, you're making an Instagram account, you're making a Facebook account, and you post there and you're putting your real name and your real beliefs and your real face and all that other stuff out there, don't be surprised if people use that in a way that you didn't intend.
Well, and I'm even thinking like something as simple as the phone book, right? Like, I mean, I have, a cell phone. I don't have a home phone, but if I did, and if I wasn't paying for an unlisted number, I'm pretty sure my address would be in there and easy enough to find.
My house numbers are on my house, I mean, at a certain point, it gets kind of silly. It's, there's a public interest in the public knowing where you live. And a big part of that public interest also is in things like your tax rolls being online and your ownership of your of real estate being online. And the reason for that is because there's a public interest in knowing who owns a place where, let's say, maybe an illegal crack den suddenly opens up, or where the party's really loud and you got to yell at somebody to turn that noise down. There's a definite public interest in that, and even if everything is hunky dory and kosher, there's a public interest in knowing who owns a particular property in case you want to buy that property.
Yeah, so it just kind of raises interesting questions about, what exactly doxing is and what the boundaries are. I mean, I certainly, and I use the phone book example that, so like a lot of people's names and addresses are probably just a matter of flipping through the right phone book. But I mean, I think for me, the boundary would be, finding that information that anybody could find, but then publishing it with kind of like this call to action to cause them inconvenience, harm, threaten them somehow, that kind of thing. Like to me, that's the boundary. But if you have a Twitter page for the purpose of spreading your hate because you're, some kind of like low-level white supremacist leader or whatever, and then you're showing your face in public, chanting anti-Semitic chants, and someone connects your face at the rally to your face on your Twitter page, and that's how they found out your name. Is that doxing? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're putting way too much stuff out there. That's in criminal law. Okay, when they talk about when you talk about searches and seizures. I mean, this is it sounds like a tangent, but I really am trying to make a point here that's actually that's actually germane to the discussion. Is that one of the things that is permitted is for the for police officers. Let's say they stop you because you got like a broken taillight or whatever, and there's a pound of heroin in a bag on the passenger seat in your car. The cops are permitted to see what is there to be seen, to sense what is there to be sensed, so that if they hear the muffled sounds of a struggle, they're allowed to hear that and act upon that, which includes forcibly opening up the trunk of your car, even if you don't want them to. They're allowed to see what there is to see, the heroin that's there. They're allowed to smell what there is to smell in case there's a smell of pot or there's a smell of alcohol on your breath. And none of those are Fourth Amendment violations against searches and seizures, even if you don't give any permission for people for the cops to search, because that stuff is out there. They're not required to deny the evidence to their senses. So if these white supremacists are, as you say, they've got their face on their Twitter stream, they've got their face out there at the rally, and they're front and center too. If it's some guy off back in the 400th row, that's maybe a different story. But if you're right up front and there's somebody taking a picture of you, you have every expectation that that picture is going to end up in a newspaper and on social media. It's going to end up on Facebook. It's going to be on Twitter. It's going to be on wherever, it'll be on CNN. It'll be on Fox. It'll be on all of the major networks, because this is clearly a news story that any journalist is going to want to cover. It's why they're sending journalists to these rallies, because they're newsworthy. And if you don't think that your face is going to show up on those screens, then I got news for you that Santa Claus isn't real either. You're living in a fantasy world if you don't think that's going to happen. I really don't want them to go back to the days of the white hoods and whatnot, but they might feel that they have to, because then at least that connection wouldn't be quite so easy to make.
Right, and it's kind of two things came to mind as that you were talking about that, and going to the most recent thing, the white hoods first. It's kind of crazy how lately it's been the opposite, in that the good guys are concealing their identities. And I'm not saying like everybody who conceals their identity is a good guy. I mean, granted, like some pretty sketchy crap out there happens, but I've been doing like a lot of research on the band Pussy Riot, which started out protesting human rights violations in Russia, and because they're basically back to like being a police state, they would wear the balaclavas over their faces to protect their identities, so in case they got arrested or whatever, it would be harder to make the connection, for one thing. Same thing, there's been a resurgence with the radical feminist group Witch, the acronym Witch could stand for lots of different things depending on what they're protesting, but generally it stands for Women's International Conspiracy something from Hell, so it can change. But like I've seen pictures from their counter protest in Boston, and they've gone to wearing balaclavas, whereas like the pictures of them in the 70s, you could totally see their identity. So it's just kind of like funny, like who's having to hide now.
Yeah, it's fascinating watching all of this develop. I mean, it's of course very scary too, but it's fascinating in terms of how protesters see themselves, how they symbolize themselves too. What's the and how does the general public see them? We I think most of us, and although there are exceptions, immediately say, okay, Nazis bad, we don't like them, we're gonna, we hate them, and immediately we denounce them, and then to see politicians sort of pull back from that and say, well, we're really not sure and whatnot, is rather dismaying. But then seeing on the other side of it that how do they relate to the other side that's protesting? Is it the 4chan folks who were denigrating Heather Heyer for her weight? Is it the pictures of clergy wearing liturgical vestments? Is it folks in rainbow garb? Is it the witch group all in black? Is it Antifa? What's the vision of this side as well? Where's the what's the public seeing as the shorthand, if you will, for each of these sides? What's that quick thing that we all look at and say, that's what that side means?
Yeah, and the other thing that I was thinking about as we were talking about this is, that the whole, is it doxing, is it not, and the whole consequences for your freedom of expression. And I just want to remind everybody that for 10, 15 years, as long as Facebook has been a thing, not too long after that, we started being a society where a school teacher can get fired for a Facebook picture of herself with a beer or some kind of fruity drink with an umbrella in it while on vacation.
Yes, and which is pretty upsetting.
If you're okay with that, and you're not okay with some Nazis losing their jobs because somebody has figured out what their name is, and the person was dumb enough to advertise themselves as a white supremacist and put their place of employment in their public Facebook or Twitter profile. You're not okay with that, but you're okay with somebody who teaches 4th grade and doesn't friend her students on social media, and a school board deciding that she shouldn't have a job anymore because she had a picture enjoying an adult beverage while on vacation or while at a girlfriend's bridal shower or something like that. Your priorities are warped, and you really need to rethink your life.
When I was in social media school, one of the things we studied was a picture like this, where it was a British teacher who had a drink in her hand, and I believe she was also wearing a bikini, and oh my God, how horrible that was. And and here she was just at a party with other people who were old enough to drink. So this wasn't her lighting up a spliff. This wasn't her handing over a beer to a teenager. This wasn't her French kissing a teenager. This wasn't even her exposing her breasts. I'm sorry?
It said this wasn't her having some girlfriend hold her hair as she puked in the ladies' room.
Or having a girlfriend kissing her, for that matter. It wasn't anything like that. Some of these things are legal, some of them are not. All of these other things that you could, clutch your pearls about, oh my God, look how immoral this is. This is a woman on vacation in a warm place wearing a bikini because, it's hot out and there's a beach and maybe she'd go swimming, or maybe not. Maybe she just wants a damn tan, and with a drink in her hand because she's on vacation.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I kind of feel like that there's a what's wrong with this picture kind of thing happening here.
Yeah, people are nuts.
So, and here's the thing too, some of you might be at home scratching your head and thinking, okay, Janet and Shanna, what the hell, because this isn't about fandom and you're getting all political and stuff, but you know what, if it's one thing that I've learned, and this goes for fandom, whether you think it is or not, whether you want it to be or not, everything is political. period. Number two, what we do out in the world eventually makes its way into fandom, and a lot of times it'll make its way into fandom worse, just because people have they'll do things through a keyboard and a screen that they wouldn't do in person, and so this. Even though it's not the direct topic, guarantee you before the next school year is out, we'll have to address something that we've just talked about in the context of fandom. And then we're going to be able to say, hey, remember in episode 10 when we said... So.
I mean, and this is kind of what the show is all about, actually. You know, we're talking about where kind of the real world collides with the fantasy world of fandom. I mean, we like it or not, we live in this culture, we live in this society, and this society has white supremacists marching in Charlottesville, and it's, you know, along with an eclipse and you know, and the hurricane in Texas and everything else that's going on.
And, okay, you know what? I'll give you your fandom connection right here, right now. The Nazis marching on Charlottesville and everything. I want you to sit your butt down, and I want you to binge watch V. Both the 80s version and the reboot that came out a few years ago. Watch V. There's your fandom connection.
And if you want another connection, I wouldn't suggest Patterns of Force, which is sort of the Space Nazis storyline in Trek. I didn't really care for that. What I would suggest is the Twilight Zone episode called Death's Head Revisited.
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent episode. But you know what? Patterns of Force, I watched that, like, not too long after the election. I was doing my TOS rewatch for the 50th anniversary. And, yeah, okay, Space Nazis, you know, I mean, like, some of the premises of the original series, you know, we're kind of loopy like that. But at the same time, though, the overall, like, message of the show, like, I did kind of feel... at the moment while I watched that, you know what, America, you need to watch this again, too. So you know what, I want you to watch Patterns of Force, even if Janet doesn't.
Well, you know, now I want to revisit it, so there.
So there.
You convinced me. All right, do we have announcements?
No. I don't think so. If we did, I can't remember, but no, I didn't have any. Do you have any?
Nothing in particular. Just that 24 Hours of GNT, we'll be doing that at the end of October, which, and I believe it's the weekend of the 28th and the 29th.
And are we counting that as episode 11?
Are we going to do anything in September?
I don't know. Well, just last time we counted it as episode 2, so I was just wondering if that was going to be episode 11.
Or episode 12, and maybe we'll sneak something into September. I don't know. Or we might put in an extra, because we do have a few of those in the queue. So this is how we make decisions about the show. We do them on the air.
You know what? I'm so tired that I forgot that there was September in between.
It's been a time warp, folks.
Okay, so in my own defense, you guys, like, all right, you're going to probably sit at home and say, this is a case of an academic lacking common sense and just basic smarts. But I have to tell you, sometimes we're stupid because we're so damn tired from working so hard, for cramming so much information. Like, I feel like if you guys ever watched Married with Children, the Kelly Bundy effect, for every new thing she learned, something had to leave her brain to make room for it. That's where I'm at right now. So I think I'm a little entitled to forget September.
You know, it's all good. It's all good. We're good.
So I guess my real question was, is 24 Hours of GNT going to be episode 12?
Sure, what the hell? Why not?
Oh, good God.
On that happy note, I think we're going to wrap up. You ready to wrap up?
I am so ready to wrap up. But you know what, listeners? I love you so much. This is how comfortable I am with you. I can completely be myself and be my stupid self with you. So please laugh with me, not at me.
This is the show that keeps on giving. All right. So we thank you again for listening. If you're in Texas, oh my God, if they tell you to evacuate, please evacuate. Please stay safe, folks, and don't dox people. It's not nice. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Music provided by Infocationary. Send mail to hosts@semanticshenanigans.com. Follow us on Twitter @2shenanigans. That's the number, not the word. 2shenanigans. On Facebook, you can find us @Semantic Shenanigans. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Semantic Shenanigans. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on Semantic Shenanigans.